Imagine you're stepping under a barbell. You're, 40-something years old. You've finally decided to prioritize your health, and you're maybe a month into this new beginner lifting program.
Right, you're just getting into the groove of things.
Exactly. So you unrack the weight, you take a deep breath, and you descend into a squat. And as you push back up to standing, your knees let out this sound that honestly, it can only be described as a bowl of Rice Krispies being crushed under a heavy boot.
Oh, yeah, that horrible symphony of snaps, crackles, and pops. It's so loud in your own head.
It really is. Or, I mean, maybe you're just warming up for the bench press, right? Just with an empty bar, and your shoulder immediately flares up with this cranky, tight, like pinchy sensation.
Which is incredibly discouraging when you're just trying to do something good for your body.
Exactly. And what's the absolute first thought that flashes through your mind in that very moment? It's just this feeling of pure sinking dread. You think, my body is expiring and I'm just getting old.
It's the most common and honestly perhaps the most devastating psychological hurdle for anyone trying to build physical resilience later in life.
Yeah, totally.
We treat that sound, or that ache, as undeniable proof that our underlying architecture is just crumbling.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We are incredibly thrilled to have you with us today. And I want to be extremely clear right from the start. If you are listening to this and you're just starting your weightlifting journey,
Or even if you're returning to the gym after like a decade away.
right, exactly. Everything we're unpacking today is tailored specifically for you. Because the beginner phase of lifting, I mean, it's supposed to be this empowering period of rapid progress, right?
It should be, yes. The newbie gains phase.
But far too often it gets entirely derailed by physical panic. You feel an ache, you assume you've broken something permanent, and well, you quit.
And the tragedy there is that the panic is almost always based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology. We're operating on this totally outdated set of assumptions about how our tissues actually respond to mechanical stress.
Which is exactly what we're going to fix today. We have a massive mission for this deep dive. We are going to completely demystify joint health.
We really are. We're going to unpack the exact biological reasons why your joints feel the way they do when you start lifting.
And we'll teach you how to definitively distinguish between, an actual structural injury and simply being under-recovered. Plus, we're going to equip you with highly practical, immediate tools to keep your joints healthy as you build that foundation.
To guide us, we're utilizing a really brilliant text today. It's titled The Thinking Lifter's Guide to Joint Longevity and Recovery.
Yeah, and what makes this text so compelling is that it's paired with this striking stack of 10 visual aids. I mean, we are looking at everything from extreme macro-cinematic shots of human anatomy.
They honestly look like alien landscapes, some of them.
They really do. All the way down to these gritty, hyper-realistic, sweaty gym environments. It's super comprehensive.
It's a profound collection of information, mostly because it bridges that gap between the microscopic cellular reality of our tissues and the lived emotional experience of, standing on a gym floor feeling vulnerable.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core thesis of the Thinking Lifter's Guide is this radical departure from how most of us view our aches and pains.
It really flips the script entirely.
Right. The text argues that those dodgy knees and cranky shoulders are rarely about inevitable aging, and they're almost never about permanent structural decay.
Which is such a relief to hear, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. What you are actually experiencing, I mean, almost every single time you feel that stiffness as a beginner is simply a temporary mismatch between the load you're applying to the body and your tissue's current tolerance for that load.
Load versus current tissue tolerance. It's such a vital rephrasing of the whole problem.
Because if you blame aging, you're blaming a biological clock that you have absolutely zero control over, right?
Exactly. It breeds this sense of helplessness. But if you frame it as a mismatch between the weight on the bar and the current capacity of your tendon, well, suddenly you have variables you can manipulate.
You're back in the driver's seat.
Right. You can change the load. You can change the frequency. You have agency again.
But if it is just a mismatch of variables, why is our instinct so incredibly powerful to immediately blame our age? Like a 35-year-old beginner will feel a twinge in their elbow and instantly leap to the conclusion that their body is suffering from irreversible wear and tear.
It's wild, isn't it?
Why is that the default setting for our brains?
Well, we've been culturally conditioned by a very specific, and I would argue highly flawed, metaphor. In the fitness world, in the medical field historically, and just in our everyday language, we relentlessly treat the human body like an automobile.
The car mileage myth.
Precisely. Let's think about how a car operates. A machine built of steel, plastic, and rubber has a finite amount of mileage built into its parts from the moment it leaves the factory floor.
Right, like every single mile you drive that car wears down the brake pads a little bit more.
Exactly. Every time you drive to the grocery store, the friction of the asphalt shaves a microscopic layer of rubber off the tire tread.
And once the tread is gone, the tire is totally useless. I mean, the car doesn't grow new rubber. You have to take it to a mechanic, throw out the old part, and pay for replacement.
And we take that exact mechanical logic and we map it directly onto our biology. We hold this deeply pessimistic, really false belief that every heavy squat is just a mile closer to the inevitable breakdown of our knee cartilage.
We think every time we press a dumbbell over our heads, we are literally grinding away the finite machinery of our rotator cuffs.
Exactly. We view our joints, that complex matrix of connective tissues, tendons, ligaments, and cartilage as passive pieces of plastic.
Passive pieces of plastic. Man, if I genuinely believed my skeleton was just a set of passive hinges grinding themselves to dust with every movement, I wouldn't want to lift heavy weights either.
Nobody would. It creates a state of constant physical anxiety. But more importantly, it is biologically inaccurate on almost every conceivable level.
Okay, so what's the actual biological reality then?
Well, your joints, your tendons, your cartilage, they are not inert materials. They are living, breathing, profoundly dynamic tissues. When you load a tendon or a ligament properly through strength training, it does not act like a brake pad.
It doesn't just wear down and thin out?
No, not at all. Through a cellular process called mechanotransduction, the physical stress of the weight actually signals the cells within the tendon to manufacture more collagen.
Oh, wow. So the physical stress is actually the signal to build.
Exactly. The tendon thickens. It remodels its internal architecture. It becomes significantly more robust and infinitely more resilient.
This brings us to the first two visual aids from our source stack, and they just so perfectly illustrate this psychological divide.
The contrast between them is really striking.
It is. The first image is incredibly visceral. It's this gritty, high-contrast shot of a 50-something woman in athletic wear, right in the middle of a heavy barbell squat.
And her expression says it all.
Yeah, it isn't one of focus or exertion. It is an expression of pure, strained agony. She looks deeply uncomfortable, pained, and honestly, she looks fearful.
Looking at her face, you see the exact terror that plagues so many beginners.
It's the fear that lifting weights at an older age, whether that's 40, 50, or 60, means you are literally actively destroying yourself under the bar.
That image is the car mileage myth made manifest. When you look at her, you can tell she isn't just dealing with the physical challenge of the weight. She is suffering from the psychological burden of believing that her structure is actively failing.
She firmly believes her internal brake pads are grinding metal on metal.
Right, and that the damage she is doing is permanent.
But then, we flip to the second image, and the contrast is startling. It's another gritty gym environment, and it features a fit, older woman. But her entire demeanor is completely different.
She looks so empowered.
She does. She's smiling confidently, looking incredibly relaxed, and just completely in her element as she casually loads this massive weight plate onto a barbell.
The text uses this image to represent its core philosophy, which they call movement optimism.
Movement optimism. We'll love that phrase.
It's the intellectual antidote to the car mileage myth. It is the profound realization that you are not made of glass. You are not a fragile machine with an expiration date.
You are a biological organism that has evolved over millions of years to adapt to physical stress.
Exactly. Movement optimism is the shift from thinking lifting weights will break my aging joints to the empowering understanding that lifting weights is the specific stimulus required to fortify my aging joints.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because if I am a beginner listening to this, I'm feeling a little skeptical.
Fair enough, hit me.
If my joints aren't passive pieces of plastic, and if they're biologically programmed to get stronger and thicker, why does it feel like the hinges are violently rusting shut during my first month of a program?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Like if I am not wearing down the tire tread, why do my knees ache when I walk up the stairs? Let's toss out the car analogy. Is it more accurate to think of our joints like the calluses on our hands? You apply friction, it hurts initially, but eventually it builds up a thick, protective layer.
The callus analogy is infinitely closer to biological reality than the brake pad analogy. Let's explore that for a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
If you have never lifted before and you grab a deeply knurled, rough metal barbell and do a series of heavy deadlifts, what happens to your hands?
Over the next couple days, the skin on your palms will become red, raw, inflamed, and just highly sensitive to the touch. I mean, it will hurt to open a jar.
But I wouldn't go to a doctor and say, my hands are permanently decaying, the skin is expiring.
No, of course not. You implicitly understand that the redness and the pain is just the initial, messy, uncomfortable friction required to signal your body to adapt.
Exactly. Your body realizes the skin isn't thick enough to handle the barbell, so it triggers an inflammatory response to bring in resources and build a thick, protective callus.
And so you're saying our joints are doing the exact same thing.
Your tendons, your ligaments, and your joint capsules are going through a nearly identical process. They are laying down new tissue. They are building an internal callus to handle the load.
So the discomfort a beginner feels isn't structural decay at all. It's the messy, noisy, inflammatory process of adaptation.
It is the biological cost of doing business. Discomfort does not automatically equal damage.
Yeah.
However, there's a nuance here, and it's the reason beginners get so confused.
What's the nuance?
While the whole body is indeed adapting, different systems within the body adapt at wildly different speeds. The skin adapts relatively quickly, the muscles adapt very quickly. But the deep connective tissues,
They operate on an entirely different timeline.
they really do. They are painfully slow to adapt compared to muscle.
Which sets up our next major exploration perfectly. Because any beginner who has survived their first week in the gym has experienced this confusing timeline.
The timeline mismatch, yeah.
If you do a heavy leg day, for 2 days, your quadriceps are incredibly sore. You know, that classic delayed onset muscle soreness. But by day 3 or 4, the muscles feel fantastic. They feel full, strong, and ready for another workout.
But your knees, the joints themselves.
They might ache for a solid week or more. If the muscle and the tendon are both building calluses, why is the muscle callus seemingly built overnight, while the tendon callus takes an eternity?
The discrepancy between muscle recovery speed and tendon recovery speed is arguably the #1 reason beginners get frustrated, assume they are injured, and just quit lifting altogether.
So what's the actual science behind the lag?
To understand why this happens, we have to look under the hood at a physiological concept called metabolic turnover.
Metabolic turnover.
Ah.
Okay, let's get into the deep anatomy of recovery. What is actually happening on a cellular level to the beginner who just finished a heavy set of squats?
Well, the speed at which any tissue in your body can recover, repair microdamage, and rebuild itself is almost entirely dictated by its blood supply. We call this vascularity.
Okay, vascularity.
Skeletal muscle is incredibly highly vascularized. Muscles are essentially giant biological sponges designed to hold and pump blood. They are packed with this intricate, dense network of capillary beds.
So when you are exercising a muscle, that massive pump you feel is literally the blood rushing into those capillary beds.
Precisely. And because of this massive blood flow, the metabolic turnover in a muscle is exceptionally rapid. Think about what blood actually does in the body.
It's like the delivery system, right?
Yes, it is the body's logistical delivery and waste removal system. When you train a muscle hard, you create microscopic tears in the muscle fibers, and you generate metabolic waste products like hydrogen ions.
Ah, the stuff that causes that burning sensation during high reps.
Right. Immediately after the workout, that abundant blood supply kicks into high gear. It rushes in carrying oxygen, amino acids, and specialized cells like macrophages that clean up the cellular debris.
So it's delivering the good stuff and taking out the trash all at once.
Exactly. It delivers the building blocks for new tissue while simultaneously flushing out the metabolic waste. Because the delivery highway is so wide and fast, a muscle can be completely exhausted, torn down, and flooded with waste on a Monday, and by Wednesday, within 48 hours.
It's good to go again.
Yes. It has been cleaned out, repaired, fortified, and is fully ready to handle another heavy stimulus.
The logistics network for the muscle is basically a massive multi-lane superhighway.
A high-speed superhighway. But now, let's look at the connective tissues. The tendons that attach those powerful muscles to the bone, and the ligaments that hold the bones together at the joint.
I'm guessing they don't have a superhighway?
Not even close. Connective tissues are the biological opposite of muscle. They are notoriously avascular, meaning they have a very, very poor blood supply.
Why would the body design it that way? I mean, why not give tendons a massive blood supply too so they can heal fast?
Because of their structural role, tendons have to transmit the immense mechanical force generated by the muscle directly into the bone to create movement.
Right, they're the anchor lines.
Exactly. And to do that efficiently, they have to be incredibly dense and incredibly stiff. They are packed tightly with tough collagen fibers. If a tendon were full of soft, squishy blood vessels like a muscle, it would be too elastic.
It wouldn't transfer force effectively. It would act like a bungee cord instead of a steel cable.
Precisely. So the body sacrifices vascularity to achieve high tensile strength.
But the cost of that high tensile strength is an incredibly slow recovery time.
Exactly. Because they lack that dense capillary network, nutrients and repair cells cannot simply rush into a tendon. They have to slowly seep and diffuse into the dense tissue matrix. The metabolic turnover is glacial compared to muscle.
We have an absolutely incredible visual aid from the source material to help the listener picture this stark difference. It is a split-screen cinematic image, and the contrast is breathtaking.
It really paints a clear picture.
On the left side of the screen, we have a highly magnified cross-section labeled active muscle fiber. It is glowing, this deep, vibrant, almost angry red. You can clearly see the high vascularity. It looks like a complex roadmap of intricate blood vessel networks, pulsing with life, energy, and heat.
It looks hungry, active, and highly dynamic.
Yes, exactly. And then on the right side of the screen, separated by a sharp dividing line, is the quiet tendon. It is colored a stark, pale white.
The lack of vascularity is immediately apparent.
There are almost no red blood vessels visible at all. It looks solid, dense, and incredibly strong, but it looks slow. It looks inert.
That visual perfectly encapsulates anatomical destiny. The red muscle is structurally built for rapid repair and constant turnover. The pale white tendon is built to withstand massive physical tension, but at the absolute, unavoidable cost of recovery speed.
Let me try to synthesize this with an analogy for the listener, because this is so crucial.
Go for it.
Imagine your body is a massive construction site, and the goal is to build a skyscraper, which is your overall strength and fitness. Your muscles, those red vascular fibers, are the frontline construction workers.
Okay, I like this.
They show up every single day. They are highly caffeinated, they have their hard hats on, and they're ready to build at a frantic pace.
They want to lay bricks every day.
Exactly. But your connective tissues, the white vascular tendons, are the supply trucks responsible for delivering the actual bricks, mortar, and steel to the site. They are reliable, they carry a heavy load, but they are driving on a dirt road, and they drive a lot slower than the workers work.
Yes, exactly.
So beginner starts a new lifting program. The muscles built the first floor of the skyscraper on Monday. They use up all the materials. By Wednesday, because they recover so fast, the workers are screaming, "Give us more bricks! We are fully recovered and ready to build the second floor."
The muscles are demanding another workout.
Right. The beginner feels that the muscle soreness is gone, so they go to the gym again. But the supply trucks, the tendons, are still miles down the dirt road trying to deliver the raw materials from Monday's job. They haven't caught up yet.
This is exactly where the problem starts.
If the enthusiastic workers keep demanding to build faster than the trucks can physically deliver the materials, the entire construction site eventually descends into chaos. Things get disorganized, extreme friction happens between the crews, and eventually the site manager blows a whistle and shuts the site down.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The workers are drastically outstripping the capacity of the supply chain. And this dynamic brings us to a crucial definition that every beginner needs to deeply internalize.
Which definition?
Well, in the medical and fitness fields, we constantly use the term overuse. A physical therapist or a doctor might evaluate a beginner's aching knee and say, "You have an overuse injury."
And what does a beginner hear when a medical professional says overuse injury?
They hear the car mileage myth again. They hear, "I have permanently broken my body by using it too much. I only had a certain number of squats in my knees, and I used them all up. My machinery is fundamentally failing."
But based on the construction site analogy, overuse has nothing to do with permanent mechanical failure.
Exactly. Overuse is a deeply misleading term for beginners. Overuse is not a permanent breaking of the body. Overuse is simply biological code for, I am applying mechanical stress faster than my slow-healing tendons can synthesize new collagen.
It is a timing error.
Yes, it is a pacing issue. It is not a structural death sentence.
We have two more visual aids that really ground this microscopic cellular anatomy into the real, sweaty, tactile world of the gym floor.
These are some of my favorite images from the stack.
First, we have an extreme macro-cinematic shot of interwoven, glowing connective tissue fibers. Because of the lighting and the magnification, they look exactly like the thick, indestructible braided metal cables of a suspension bridge.
When you look at that image, you immediately grasp what is actually bearing the physical load during a heavy lift. It isn't just the muscle belly flexing. The muscle is pulling on those thick cables, and those cables are pulling on the bone.
The sheer physical tension running through those braided fibers during a heavy deadlift is
And
immense.
those thick cables take significant time to fortify and thicken.
And the second image brings it right down to the human element. It is a split-level close-up. The top half shows a heavily muscular shoulder glistening with sweat under harsh gym lighting.
Very intense.
And the bottom half is a cinematic close-up of weathered, deeply lined hands aggressively gripping a textured cable attachment. It brilliantly bridges the gap between the microscopic anatomy we've been discussing and the very real, gritty effort you are exerting.
Because you are literally pulling on your own internal suspension cables with every single rep you perform.
And when you yank on those cables with a heavy load 3 days a week before they have fully recovered from the previous session, they're going to complain. The supply trucks are going to honk their horns.
Oh, they'll honk loudly.
Okay, this logical progression leads me to a really pressing question. If the tissue is simply lagging in its recovery, if the supply trucks are just running a few days late, why does it actually hurt so much?
It's a very fair question.
I mean, pain is pain. The experience of pain is highly disruptive. If the joint isn't actually broken, if the tendon isn't snapping off the bone, and if it's just a timing issue, where is that intense, piercing pain signal coming from?
This is the juncture where we have to completely dismantle how almost every single one of us was taught to understand the phenomenon of pain from childhood.
That is a bold statement. How are we taught to understand pain?
Historically, for the last several hundred years, medicine and biology operated on a philosophical concept called Cartesian dualism.
Cartesian dualism sounds fancy.
It is an incredibly pervasive yet entirely outdated and overly simplistic idea named after the 17th century philosopher René Descartes. Cartesian dualism basically argues that the mind and the body are separate entities and that physical pain is a direct, linear, one-to-one reflection of tissue damage in the body.
So, Cartesian dualism says that if my knee hurts, my knee must be damaged. The more it hurts, the more it must be damaged.
And exactly. It views the nervous system like a simple electrical circuit. And we have a perfect evocative visual for this in the source material.
The doorbell image.
Yes. Imagine a vintage 1950s era mechanical doorbell mounted on a peeling, faded wall. Underneath the button, there is a little tarnished brass plaque that reads in utilitarian text. Figure 2, Human Interaction Circuit Completion.
The diagram shows a finger pressing the button, a wire running directly up the wall, and the bell ringing loudly at the top.
So, mapping this old doorbell model onto our bodies. The button being pressed is the physical injury, say, you step wrong and strain a ligament in your knee.
Okay.
The wire is the nerve carrying the signal up your leg, and the bell ringing in your brain is the pain you consciously feel.
You push the button, the bell rings. If the bell is ringing incredibly loudly, Cartesian dualism dictates that someone must be smashing the button with a hammer.
Right. It assumes a perfect, infallible relationship between the state of the tissue and the experience of pain. But modern neuroscience over the last few decades has completely blown this simple doorbell model out of the water.
Really? So the doorbell is totally wrong.
We now know definitively that pain is vastly more complicated and far more subjective than a simple electrical circuit.
If the 1950s doorbell is wrong, what is the correct model? Enter the biopsychosocial model of pain.
Exactly. The biopsychosocial model. It is a massive multisyllabic term, but understanding it is the absolute key to unlocking the freedom of movement optimism.
How does it differ from the doorbell?
This modern scientific model explains that pain is not a direct, objective reflection of tissue damage. Instead, pain is an output from the brain.
Wait, from the brain.
Yes. It is an alarm system created by the brain, and the brain acts like an audio engineer, constantly adjusting the volume of that alarm by turning various distinct knobs.
The brain is adjusting the volume based on what? Let's break down these knobs, because this sounds like we are venturing into science fiction.
It's not fiction. It's neurobiology. The brain is gathering data from 3 primary categories to determine how loud the pain alarm needs to be. The first knob is the biological or physical input.
Which means what, practically?
In neuroscience, we call this nociception. These are the actual nerve endings in your knee sending signals up to the spinal cord saying, hey, there is an increase in temperature here, there is mechanical pressure here, there is an acidic chemical environment here.
So the physical button from the doorbell model still exists. The knee is still sending a signal.
The physical signal exists, yes, but nociception is not pain. Nociception is just raw data. It is a danger signal, not a pain signal.
Okay, so what does the brain do with that data?
The brain receives that raw data and then immediately checks the second knob, your psychological state. What are your deeply held beliefs about this physical sensation? Are you terrified of it? What is your current overall stress level? Are you suffering from chronic anxiety? Are you depressed?
And what is the third knob?
The social knob, your external environment and social context. Do you have a strong support system? Are you facing eviction? Are you under intense, unrelenting pressure at work from a toxic boss?
To visualize this massive upgrade in complexity from the simple doorbell, our sources provide a starkly contrasting image. It is a photorealistic 3D render of the human body, but the skin and muscles are translucent.
Gorgeous image.
What stands out is the nervous system and the brain, which are brightly glowing in intricate branching patterns. It looks like a highly complex, interconnected web of electrical energy, with the brain sitting at the top, not as a simple bell, but as a massive, glowing supercomputer or synthesizer.
That glowing brain is the ultimate synthesizer of threats. It does not just ring when a button is pushed. It takes the raw physical data of nociception from your aching knee, mixes it in real time with your psychological fear, compounds it with your social stress.
And then what?
And then asks itself one central question. Based on all of this total data, how much danger is this organism currently in? And the brain then produces the sensation of pain as a mechanism to change your behavior and protect you.
Let's ground this glowing supercomputer in a highly realistic scenario for our listener. Let's say we have a beginner. We'll call him John.
Okay, let's look at Sean.
John only slept 5 hours last night because his toddler was sick and crying. He is incredibly stressed because he has a massive project deadline at work tomorrow, and his boss is breathing down his neck.
Classic high-stress scenario.
And crucial to our earlier discussion about the car mileage myth, John holds the deep-seated, fearful belief that squatting with a barbell is inherently dangerous and will inevitably destroy his spine.
That scenario is a perfect biological storm for massive pain output.
Walk us through what happens biologically when John goes to the gym after work and steps under the squat bar.
Before John even touches the barbell, his nervous system is already redlined. Because of the sleep deprivation and the severe work stress, his adrenal glands have flooded his system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline.
So he's already on edge.
Exactly. When you have high systemic cortisol, it actually lowers the firing threshold of your peripheral nerves.
Yeah.
Your nervous system literally becomes hypervigilant and overly sensitive.
So the electrical wiring in his body is already humming with tension.
Exactly. Then John steps under the barbell, holding a core psychological belief that this activity is a massive threat to his physical safety. He descends into the squat. The mechanical stress on his patellar tendon sends a completely normal, low-level physical danger signal, nociception, up the spinal cord to the brain.
It's just a tendon saying, hey, we're bearing some load down here.
Right. If John were well-rested, happy, and confident in his technique, his brain would receive that nociception and say, we are fine, we are building strength, no alarm needed. He would feel effort, but not pain.
But John is not well rested.
No. Because John is sleep-deprived, stressed, and fearful, his brain receives that exact same nociceptive signal and panics. The brain looks at the lack of sleep, the toxic boss, the belief of impending structural doom, and the signal from the knee, and it concludes, our total systemic load is maxed out. We are in extreme global danger. We cannot handle this physical stress on top of everything else.
So what does the brain do?
To protect John and force him to stop the activity, the brain grabs the master volume knob and cranks the knee pain up to a screaming 9 out of 10.
Whoa.
The brain creates severe pain, not because the knee is actually tearing or failing structurally, but as an overwhelming behavioral deterrent. It's forcing him to drop the weight and go home, protecting him from a perceived global threat to his survival.
Now, I have to stop you here, and I want to play the highly skeptical listener, because this is an incredibly radical concept to grasp, especially when you are the one suffering.
It is radical, yes.
If I am John and my knee is screaming in agony, are you telling me that my bad boss and my crying toddler literally made my knee hurt more? Are you saying this intense, sharp pain is just a psychological illusion? Is it all in my head?
This is the crux of the matter, and it raises an incredibly important question. It is the single most vital nuance for any beginner or any human being to understand about their body.
Which is?
The pain John is feeling is absolutely 100% real. He is physically feeling it in his tissue. It is not an illusion. It is not imaginary. He is not making it up.
Okay, that's good to hear.
The sensation of pain is a real biological output. But the meaning of the pain is fundamentally different than what Cartesian dualism led us to assume.
The meaning is different. Let's unpack that carefully.
Under the old 1950s doorbell model, severe pain meant severe tissue damage. It meant structural failure. Under the modern biopsychosocial model, severe pain often just means your central alarm system has become overly sensitive.
So it's a false alarm.
In a way. The intense pain doesn't mean John's patellar tendon is snapping. It means his global recovery capacity is completely tapped out. His brain is saying, I do not have the metabolic or psychological resources to recover from this heavy squat right now because I'm spending all my energy trying to keep you awake and managing your cortisol levels from work.
So the pain is physically real,
Mm-hmm.
but it is acting as an alarm bell for systemic fatigue and stress, not as an indicator of localized structural destruction.
Precisely. That completely reframes the entire experience of being a beginner in the gym. It takes the terror out of the ache.
It really does. It's not that you are inherently weak or that your body is a fragile piece of glass that is breaking under the bar. It's that your central nervous system is incredibly smart, highly integrative, and fiercely protective of its limited biological resources.
Your brain is trying to save you. When you truly understand that the pain is a protector output rather than a damage meter, the profound fear associated with lifting evaporates. You stop catastrophizing.
This is deeply comforting theory. It is a total paradigm shift in how we view ourselves.
Yeah.
But we need to get intensely practical here.
Let's do it.
Let's step back onto the gym floor. Because when you are standing there, chalk on your hands under a heavy barbell and a joint suddenly starts to ache, you don't have the luxury of time to sit down and write a neuroscience thesis on the biopsychosocial model.
No, you definitely don't.
You have to make a split-second practical decision. Do I do another rep or do I rack the bar? How does a beginner actually know the difference between a hypervigilant false alarm driven by stress and a real acute structural injury that requires them to stop immediately?
This is exactly where we transition from abstract theory to hard execution. This is where we teach the listener how to graduate from a reactive beginner to a thinking lifter.
A thinking lifter.
Yes, a thinking lifter does not just blindly react to the sensation of pain. They assess it using highly specific, nuanced, objective filters. They use these filters to auto-regulate their training in real time.
Autoregulation. Adjusting the plan based on the reality of the day. Let's give the listener those specific tools right now. What is the very first filter they should apply when they feel discomfort?
Filter number 1 is what the text calls the in-workout trend. When you feel an ache, you have to calmly ask yourself, does the character and intensity of this pain get progressively better or progressively worse as the workout advances?
Let's map that onto a real-world scenario. Let's use the bench press.
Okay. You walk into the gym, you lie down on the bench, and you do your first warm-up set with just the empty 45-pound barbell. As you lower the bar to your chest, your right shoulder feels cranky.
We've all been there. It aches, it feels stiff.
Exactly. It feels stiff and uncooperative. If you are operating under the car mileage myth, you panic, assume you've torn your rotator cuff, and go home. But if you apply the in-workout trend filter, you stay calm.
You test the waters.
You proceed to your second warm-up set, adding a little bit of weight. You focus intensely on your technique. If, by the time you reach your third or fourth working set with heavier weight, that shoulder suddenly feels greased up, smooth, and the initial ache has largely faded into the background noise of the exertion.
Then what happened?
What you experienced was not an injury.
If the pain fades as you move, what was actually causing the ache in the first place?
It was likely just low-level residual inflammation from a previous session or transient stiffness due to the viscosity of your synovial fluid.
Synovial fluid, what's that?
Synovial fluid is the thick liquid that lubricates your joint capsules. When you're cold, that fluid is thick and gelatinous, like cold motor oil. As you move the joint, the mechanical friction literally heats up the fluid, thinning it out and allowing the joint surfaces to glide smoothly.
Oh, that makes so much sense. The supply trucks were just a little slow getting the oil to the joint that morning, but once they arrived, everything worked fine.
Exactly. That initial ache is what we call productive discomfort. Your body simply needed mechanical movement to raise the local tissue temperature and get the lubricating fluid moving. The trend improved. You are entirely safe to train hard.
But what is the danger sign? What is the red flag in the in-workout trend that tells you to stop?
The undeniable red flag is that the pain is sharp, highly localized to a specific millimeter of tissue, and crucially, if the intensity worsens with every single repetition.
So it's getting louder, not quieter.
Yes. If the empty bar aches, the first warm-up set hurts, and the second warm-up set makes you physically wince and lose strength, the trend is aggressively negative. The alarm is getting louder. That is not a false alarm or thick synovial fluid.
That's a real deal.
That is your nervous system definitively telling you that you are actively exceeding the physical capacity of that specific tissue in that specific moment. You must pivot. You must immediately change the exercise, drop the weight, or alter the range of motion.
The trend tells the truth. If it warms up, keep going. If it gets sharper, pivot. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
What is the second filter for the thinking lifter?
The second filter is the 24-hour rule. This requires a bit of patience because you have to objectively evaluate how your body feels the morning after your workout.
The morning after is always the ultimate arbiter of truth.
It truly is. Let's say you pushed hard on a heavy squat session. You wake up the next morning, swing your legs out of bed, and your knees feel stiff. Maybe they feel a bit heavy, and the muscles around them are sore.
Sure, normal post-leg day stuff.
Right. But as you walk down the hall, you realize you can still move through your full range of motion. You can squat down to pet your dog without sharp pain. That general stiffness means you are in the clear.
You applied a heavy mechanical stress. The body is busy processing the metabolic turnover, but you did not break the structural system. You are adapting. Okay, but what if I wake up, stumble into the kitchen, and as I reach my arm up into the high cupboard for my morning coffee mug, my shoulder gives me a sharp, shooting wince of pain that makes me literally drop my arm?
If you get a sharp, debilitating wince from a basic, unloaded daily activity 24 hours after a training session, it means you objectively overshot your tissue tolerance during yesterday's workout.
The alarm is blaring.
The mechanical load you applied significantly exceeded the current recovery capacity of the connective tissue. The alarm system is now blaring, even during light movements, to violently force you to rest and allow those slow-moving supply trucks to finally catch up and repair the microdamage.
To help visualize this ongoing assessment, this constant balancing act of stress and recovery, our source file includes a beautiful, abstract, cinematic image.
Oh, the spirals. I love this one.
It features two brightly glowing spirals of light, one a vibrant teal, the other a deep, radiant gold. These two spirals are continuously intertwined, twisting upward together into a dark, expansive space like a double helix.
That image is a profound, elegant metaphor for the long-term biological conversation you are having with your body. Building strength and resilience isn't a single, isolated event.
It is not defined by one good workout or one bad workout.
Exactly. It is a dynamic, constantly evolving, intertwined relationship between stress and recovery. The teal spiral represents the physical stress you actively apply in the gym, and the gold spiral represents the biological recovery your body mounts in response while you sleep and eat.
They have to dance together in rhythm.
They do. Over months and decades, this continuous, balanced, upward spiral builds incredible, undeniable physical resilience.
But inevitably, a beginner is going to mess up the rhythm of the dance steps. They're going to get overzealous and push too hard. So if I am the listener and I wake up with that sharp wince when reaching for the coffee, does that mean I'm banished from the gym for a month?
This is where so many people go wrong.
Do I have to completely halt the teal spiral of stress until the pain is zero?
Not at all, and this is where the vast majority of beginners make a critical error. They adopt an all-or-nothing mindset. If they feel pain, they assume they must become completely sedentary to heal.
But that's not true.
I assure you, complete rest is rarely the answer for connective tissue. If you fall into the creaky category and overshoot your tolerance, you do not need to stop training. You just need to implement intelligent auto-regulation.
Adjusting the variables to keep the conversation going.
Exactly. The human body is a highly communicative organism. Some days you walk into the gym and your body says, I slept 9 hours, my stress is low, the supply trucks are fully stocked, let's hit a personal record.
Those are the best days.
They are. But other days, after poor sleep, a stressful week at work, or an overzealous previous session, your body is politely saying, hey, the alarm system is a little sensitive today. Can we turn the intensity down by 10%?
Can we use dumbbells instead of the barbell?
Can we just focus on blood flow? A thinking lifter sets their ego aside and listens to that request. You don't abandon the gym, you alter the immediate demand to keep the upward spiral moving.
This has been a massive paradigm shift. We've covered a tremendous amount of theory. We have thoroughly dismantled the car mileage myth and replaced it with mechanotransduction and movement optimism.
It's a lot to take in, but it's crucial.
We've explored the microscopic anatomy of vascular muscle versus avascular, slow-healing tendons. We've unlocked the revolutionary biopsychosocial model of pain and how your brain acts as an alarm synthesizer.
The glowing supercomputer.
Exactly. And we've given you the in-workout trend and the 24-hour rule to assess that alarm. Now, we need to bring all of this powerful theory directly to the squat rack. Let's give the listener the exact practical tools to physically adjust their routine right now.
Time for the practical fixes.
If a beginner is dealing with a stiff, uncooperative joint, if the alarm is ringing, how do they actually fix it or train around it safely on the gym floor?
We are going to provide two highly specific, biomechanically sound, actionable strategies for you today. One strategy for revolutionizing how you warm up, and one strategy for altering the mechanics of the exercises themselves.
Let's start with the warm-up, because we all know that doing 3 minutes on the elliptical machine while scrolling on our phones doesn't actually do anything for cranky elbows or stiff shoulders.
Oh, the elliptical warm-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, a general cardiovascular warm-up is fine for raising your core body temperature, but it does absolutely nothing to prepare specific, slow-healing connective tissues for heavy, localized loads.
So what's the alternative?
One of the absolute best, most practical strategies for joint preparation comes from the late legendary bodybuilder and coach, John Meadows.
John Meadows was a genius when it came to training longevity.
He was an absolute master. His strategy was elegantly simple. Start your workout with a highly targeted, non-stressful pump exercise aimed directly at the joint that typically bothers you.
A targeted pump exercise.
How is
That
that?
differ from a normal warm-up set.
Let's use our bench press example again. Let's say your elbows always ache when you press heavy weight. Instead of walking up to the bench press, lying down, and starting with the empty barbell, you completely change the sequence.
Okay, what do you do instead?
You start your workout over at the cable machine, you grab a rope attachment, and you do 3 or 4 sets of incredibly high rep, very lightweight tricep pushdowns. We're talking 20, 25, or even 30 reps per set, stopping well before muscular failure.
So before your elbows even experience the heavy compressive load of a barbell, you are spending 5 minutes just mechanically pumping the triceps.
Exactly. Think back to our anatomy discussion about metabolic turnover. Tendons are avascular. They have poor blood supply.
Right, the dirt roads.
By doing extremely high reps with lightweight, you are artificially driving that massive high vascularity muscular blood flow directly into the area adjacent to the avascular tendon. You are forcing the supply trucks to the site early.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It achieves 2 critical biological objectives. First, the massive influx of blood flushes the entire joint capsule with nutrients, oxygen, and lubricating fluids. Second, the sustained, repetitive muscular contraction generates significant internal friction, which drastically raises the local tissue temperature.
And as we discussed earlier, raising the temperature physically alters the viscosity of the synovial fluid.
Yes. A warm, blood-engorged tendon swimming in thinned-out synovial fluid is exponentially more pliable, elastic, and resilient than a cold, stiff tendon.
So by the time you finally walk over to the bench press and unrack the heavy bar,
The elbow joint is fully prepped, the tissue is highly pliable, and the brain's cranky alarm bell is turned off because the area feels secure and well-resourced.
it's a brilliant proactive solution. Don't wait for the joint to warm up under heavy loads. Front-load the blood flow with light loads. Okay, that covers the warm-up. But what is the second practical fix? What if you do the pump work? The joint is warm and flushed with blood, but the heavy exercise itself still feels mechanically dangerous or painful at a certain point in the range of motion.
Then we utilize an advanced, highly effective technique called accommodating resistance.
Accommodating resistance.
This is a brilliant mechanical adjustment that allows you to respect your current tissue tolerance, reduce joint stress, and still train the muscles incredibly hard.
Accommodating resistance sounds super technical. How do we break this down for a beginner who has only ever used standard metal plates?
To understand accommodating resistance, you first have to understand the natural strength curve of the human body during a barbell lift.
The strength curve. Explain that.
If you analyze the biomechanics of almost any compound lift like a squat or a bench press, the movement is not equally difficult from start to finish. There is a specific point where the leverage is the worst, the muscles are at their weakest, and the joint feels the most mechanically exposed and vulnerable.
Where is that point usually located?
It is almost always at the very bottom of the movement, which we call the stretched position. Think about the bottom of a deep barbell squat. Your knees and hips are fully flexed. Mechanically, the moment the leverage forces working against you are at their absolute peak.
This is where the highest amount of shear stress is placed on the connective tissues of the knee.
Right. The bottom of the squat is where you feel the massive, crushing pressure, and it's where you feel like you might get stapled to the floor if you fail.
Similarly, the bottom of this bench press, when the bar is touching your chest, is where the shoulders feel stretched to their absolute mechanical limit.
Exactly. The joint is most vulnerable at the bottom, and it is most stable and mechanically advantageous at the top when you're standing tall or when your arms are fully locked out.
So how does accommodating resistance fix this?
Accommodating resistance is a tool designed to match the weight on the bar to that specific biological strength curve. It aims to lighten the physical load specifically in that vulnerable bottom position to protect the joints, while simultaneously keeping the weight incredibly heavy at the top to challenge the muscles where the joints are safely stacked.
To visualize exactly how a beginner can set this up, we have our final, highly practical image from the source stack.
And this one looks intimidating at first glance, but it's so useful.
It really does. Picture a standard, heavily loaded barbell resting on a squat rack in a commercial gym. But instead of just having heavy metal plates on the ends, there are thick, heavy-duty elastic resistance bands securely looped around the ends of the barbell.
Yes.
The other ends of these bands are anchored tightly to the solid metal pegs at the very bottom of the squat rack frame near the floor.
It looks like an intense setup reserved for professional powerlifters, but the actual mechanics of it are incredibly joint-friendly and perfect for a beginner dealing with aches.
Walk us through the physics. Explain exactly how those bands manipulate the weight as the lifter moves through the squat.
Let's say you unrack the bar and begin to lower your body into the squat. As you descend closer to the floor, the elastic bands shrink. They physically lose their tension.
Okay, so the tension goes away as you go down.
Yes. So when you reach the very bottom of the squat, that highly vulnerable stretched position where your leverage is the poorest and your knees are under the most sheer stress, the bands have completely relaxed. They aren't pulling downward at all.
The only weight you are lifting is the metal on the bar.
You have successfully mechanically reduced the total load exactly where your joints need relief the most.
But the lift isn't over. Now you have to stand back up.
Yes. And this is where the magic happens. As you drive upward out of the bottom position, the bands begin to stretch. And as an elastic band stretches, the tension increases exponentially.
So it's getting heavier.
The bands forcefully add resistance, pulling downward on the bar harder and harder with every single inch you rise. By the time you are standing fully upright at the top of the squat, where your skeleton is perfectly stacked, your leverage is optimal, and your joints are incredibly secure, the bands are stretched to their absolute maximum limit.
So the weight is at its absolute heaviest when your body is mechanically equipped to handle it safest.
Precisely. You get the enormous benefit of a massive muscular overload at the top of the movement to drive strength and hypertrophy, but you completely avoid the joint-destroying shear stress at the vulnerable bottom. The resistance accommodates your changing leverage.
I love to compare the concept of accommodating resistance to putting training wheels on a child's bicycle, but, repurposed for building immense strength.
That's a great analogy.
The training wheels aren't there to make the entire ride effortless. You still have to pedal hard and exert yourself. But the wheels are positioned to give you critical support exactly in the wobble zone, that unstable, vulnerable bottom position where you feel like you might crash. By providing support in the wobble zone, it allows you to push incredibly hard and confidently through the rest of the movement without the psychological fear of structural failure.
That is a highly apt functional analogy. And when you step back and look at these practical interventions using targeted high-rep pump work to forcefully drive vascularity and thin out synovial fluid, and utilizing tools like resistance bands to intelligently alter the mechanical resistance curve to protect vulnerable angles.
That's game-changing.
This is exactly how you evolve. This is the precise path a beginner takes to transition into a resilient, lifelong thinking lifter.
It is the practical application of movement optimism.
Absolutely. By acknowledging the reality of your anatomy, by managing your global biopsychosocial stress levels outside the gym walls, by deeply respecting the naturally slow metabolic turnover of your avascular tendons, and by proactively using intelligent mechanical tools when the alarm system gets sensitive, you completely revolutionize your relationship with physical feedback.
The fear is gone.
The fear vanishes. Every ache, every pop, and every twinge stops looking like a biological catastrophe or a sign of impending doom. You stop panicking, you stop catastrophizing, and you stop quitting. You simply assess the filter, adjust the mechanical variables, and keep moving forward on the upward spiral.
And that profound shift in perspective brings us full circle to the ultimate core philosophy of our deep dive today. If you are listening to this right now, whether you are just starting out with an empty barbell or trying to rebuild after years away, I want you to actively banish the idea that your body is a depreciating asset.
You must reject the car mileage myth.
You are not an automobile running out of brake pads. You are a highly sophisticated, deeply resilient, and incredibly adaptable biological system. When your joints complain, when they pop like Rice Krispies, they are rarely failing. They're usually just communicating.
They are asking for a little more time to build those thick internal calluses, or they're asking for a reduction in global stress so the neurological alarm system can reset to baseline.
The human body is fundamentally designed to heal, to adapt, and to strengthen in response to load. You have to trust that evolutionary design.
It's all about trust.
We hope this deep dive has completely reframed how you view your time in the gym. If you found this highly nuanced, deeply science-backed exploration of joint health helpful, we have a small, quick favor to ask of you.
It's a small one.
Please, take a second right now to like this video and subscribe to the Nuance Lifter YouTube channel. We are completely dedicated to providing these thorough deep dives to help you understand your physiology so you can train smarter, safely, and for the rest of your life.
Subscribing really helps the channel grow, and more importantly, it helps the algorithm push this information to other beginners who might be sitting at home right now, struggling with these exact same fears and aches.
And we genuinely want to hear from you directly. We are pulling a specific prompt straight from our source text today. Let us know down in the comments section. What is the one specific joint in your body that is always trying to tell you it's old?
Is it your left knee? Your right shoulder?
And more importantly, how are you actively training around it using some of the exact concepts we unpacked today? Are you going to try the high-rep tricep pump work before benching? Are you going to set up bands on your next squat day? Let's get a real practical conversation going in the comments.
Before we officially sign off, I would like to leave the listener with one final, highly provocative thought to mull over on their own time. We spent a massive portion of today deeply discussing the biopsychosocial model of pain.
We did. The glowing supercomputer brain synthesizing threats.
Yes. Consider the profound implications of that model. If our psychological state, our chronic anxiety, our lack of sleep, and our daily work stress literally function as biological volume knobs that actively turn up the physical sensation of pain by sensitizing our nervous system.
The reverse must also be scientifically true.
Yes, exactly.
The reverse, what does that look like?
Yeah. How might actively cultivating joy in your daily life? How might taking a walk in nature, aggressively managing your work stress, laughing with your family, and practicing deep mindfulness outside the gym literally change the underlying neurobiology of your body?
That's fascinating to think about.
Could lowering your systemic cortisol actually increase the sheer amount of physical strength and pain-free resilience you can physically express inside the gym?
Oh, wow. That is a massive paradigm shift.
We spend so much of our time obsessively debating barbell mechanics, perfect rep schemes, and protein intake. But your mind, the state of your nervous system, and how you choose to manage your daily life outside the gym might actually be your single most powerful piece of lifting equipment.
What an absolutely phenomenal takeaway. Your mind is the heaviest weight you lift. So the next time you stand up from a heavy squat and you hear those knees pop like a bowl of Rice Krispies, take a deep breath. Do not panic. Do not assume your machinery is falling apart.
Just listen to it.
Just remember, your incredibly complex body isn't breaking it. It's simply trying to tell you that it needs a slightly different biological conversation today. Keep listening to it, keep adapting the variables, and above all, keep moving. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.